This episode of iFanboy is brought to you by GoDaddy and Netflix. Now, you've got one on the way.
I do.
I don't have any kids.
Mm-hmm. Video podcast from the comic book discussion site iFanboy.com. I'm Josh Flanagan.
I'm Connor Kilpatrick.
And I'm Ron Richards. And it's funny because, we talk about comics. We've been talking about comics for years. We're grown men. We're in our 30s.
Whoa there, whoa.
Men is a...
There's a stereotype that comics are for kids.
Man boy.
And it's interesting because comics did start off as being for kids. In the 1940s, the comics were mainly aimed at children. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until the evil Dr. Frederick Wertham wrote his book, The Seduction of the Innocent, where he made the argument saying that maybe comics weren't so good for kids, but comics rebounded, and even in the 60s and most of the 70s and 80s...
Aimed at kids.
Right.
Kids read them.
They were much more all ages.
Yeah.
But in the last 20 years or so, us kids who read comics grew up, and a funny thing happened. The comics matured with us.
Other kids stopped reading them.
And kids stopped reading comics.
One of my great pet peeves in the world is that I'd say a couple times a year or so, you'll see a newspaper article that'll say, Biff Bam Pow, comics aren't for kids anymore. Which is they haven't been since 1986.
Right, exactly. But in the past couple of years, there's actually been a somewhat, I think the companies have kind of realized and said, we better make some comics for kids. And
because the entire audience are not, they have to add to it somehow.
Yeah. And we know a lot of you in our audience, actually, a lot of you do have kids or have kids in your lives or something. So we thought, let's do a show talking all about the comics that are for kids that are being published right now. Now, we picked out a selection of books that we want to talk about. But before we get into that, both Marvel and DC, as well as a lot of the other companies, have a lot of books for kids. And specifically Marvel and DC. Marvel has the whole Marvel Adventures line, which is, Spider-Man Family, stuff like that's catered for kids. Those books are great. We're not talking about those specifically, but that's not to discount their quality of them.
Yep.
They are doing, and DC's doing the same thing with Super Friends.
The giant DC line.
Image has a line through Shadow line. There's lots of options.
So there's lots of people doing it, but we picked out some of the ones that we think are the most special. And speaking of DC, the first one we want to talk about is Tiny Titans. Which is published by DC, part of their Johnny DC line, with the team of Art Balthazar and Franco.
Just Franco.
Generalissimo.
Franco. This won the Eisner this year for Best Comics for Kids.
Best ongoing series.
Now, when it started... Yeah, nice. When this came out, I said, great, I have a little niece who's currently 6. When this started coming out, I think she was 3 or 4. I just started leaving them at my sister's house. And these are actually my niece's comics.
My question to you is, what are you teaching your niece?
Well...
What is this?
It shows that she's reading...
She's reading the cover off the magazine.
She's reading the hell out of these comics.
Oh my God, it's going to rip.
Yeah, I know,
It's about to come apart.
She...
Did you steal these from her?
I did, actually.
Frantically in the house right now, like...
She's sitting there crying.
She's got a whole box of them, but she loves Tiny Titans. And one of the reasons why, I think, from the get-go, I mean, the logo's written kind of in crayon. Yep. The characters are very kind of simple, the way they're drawn. But it's not... That's the surface one. I talked to my sister. I'm like, why did this stick with her? Why did she like it? And my sister said that it's because the stories are like 4 pages.
Yeah.
And they're easy to follow for a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old. For a beginning reader, she said they're great because she plows through them. She, gets lost in each story, and it keeps. Unfortunately, their attention spans are short, so it keeps them involved.
There's a little kid reading Wednesday comics in this one.
Yeah, well, what's neat is that I also read this. I read it before I give her.
In the cross promotion early.
Well, no, there's a lot of tie-ins to the DC universe. They do this is World's Funniest instead of World's Finest, and they riff off of a lot of what DC does by using their DC characters.
Do you think it helps that you've got characters like Supergirl and Batgirl and this stuff for the kids, for your nieces and everything?
Yeah, no, my niece loves Terra. That's her favorite because she throws rocks at Beast Boy. I mean, that's and they're all the DC characters that we know from the sidekicks mainly, and the Teen Titans stuff like that are present. Mm-hmm. But they're done in a way that is for kids. And Art Balthazar and Franco, they know what they do. What Patrick the Wolf Boy, that's what they did before this, and they know how to do comics for kids. I mean, they deserve that Eisner totally easily.
What do you got next?
So got next.
But that's their favorite book.
That's their favorite book.
Okay.
That's their absolute favorite book. The next one is from Marvel, which is a new series which has been coming out in issues. Hasn't been collected yet, but it probably will be. XBabies.
Guess who brought this one to the show?
Hey. But this one is interesting because the art is by Jacob Chabot, who did the Mighty Skullboy Army comic, which is an independent comic for kids that has gotten some, some critical acclaim. This is taking the concept of in the 80s when Chris Claremont and Art Adams made little baby version, like a Muppet Babies version of the X-Men.
So there has to be a way to tie this into continuity. It can't just exist on its own.
Yep.
This is very much taking from the Teen Titans kind of model of making smaller versions of the characters and having fun with them.
Sort of a higher end production on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's glossier paper. It's
right.
I mean, the Teen Titans is it's cheaper, isn't it? Or it was cheaper. $2.25. It used to be cheaper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is.
I didn't realize that.
This is $3.99.
Yeah.
How many kids are going to be buying? Is this for adults?
No, but
this
when
is
it gets collected in the digest size, they're doing it for I'm reading it because I'm an X-Men fan, but for kids,
I think that's for adults. That's for kids.
Yeah.
I think you can tell.
But I read both of them though.
Well, what does that say about you or the books?
But it shows that, I mean, it's a way, it's by taking the characters that they know, like kids are watching the Marvel Superhero Squad and Wolverine and the X-Men, like I was talking to my niece and she's asking me who's the white-haired lady in the X-Men. I'm like, oh, it's Storm.
And you talked to her for 4 hours and she never wanted to talk to her.
But
then she went to Wakanda. Please stop, Uncle Ron.
But it's this idea that taking these characters that are in the public eye of the pop culture and that they've already know about, they've already heard about Batgirl, they've already heard about Wolverine, putting them in a way that's packaged better for kids. To that wit, Boom Studios has been doing.
They do a lot of kids books.
A lot of kids books. And most recently, they got the license to the Disney books, which they might not have much longer. We don't know with the Marvel DC deal. But most recently, The Incredibles.
Well, kids like anybody. Anybody reading comics, they're gonna want to see something they recognize, and it's probably nothing more recognizable than, The Incredibles or Cars, which they also do things like that. Yeah. So good move.
Yeah, no, exactly. And this is notable for us as comic fans because this is actually written by Mark Waid
and Landry Walker.
Yeah. Who is one of the Mark Waid is one of the premier kind of comic book writers. Wrote Fantastic Four, did Kingdom Come, but it's done in a way that
he's the Boom Studios editor-in-chief.
Yes, indeed. But these are written in a way that are accessible for both kids as well as adults. Which is great because The Incredibles are such a great property.
Well, if you think of probably the most popular and most successful financially, The Incredibles might be the most popular superheroes.
Probably
around, considering how.
And it's so natural to go to comics because it's basically the Fantastic Four.
Yeah. But they also have books for the Cars and the Muppets and which we're going to talk about, and they do Finding Nemo and Monsters Inc.
Yeah, and more recently they Gemstone Publishing used to have the license for the Uncle Scrooge comics and the Walt Disney comics. Boom got that license and has really in that kind of injected a lot of energy and a lot of quality into that line.
They have a ton of books.
Yep. Mickey Mouse and Friends is setting up this whole kind of platform for Mickey and Pete.
Are these new comics?
Yeah, these are brand new. These are all brand new. Yeah, these aren't reprints. They're not, Yeah. They got Walt Disney's comics. Mickey Mouse and Friends are also doing the Uncle Scrooge line, which the Uncle Scrooge comics, the old Don Rosa.
Money Bin.
Yeah.
I used to have those. I have those big hardcover reprints somewhere.
Yeah.
Now I note that this one says cover A. Do you think children are really into alternate cover situations?
Not so much.
Boom does two covers for every book they do.
They do, yeah.
It's like it's what they do.
But a lot of the Disney purists, a lot of friends of mine who are big Uncle Scrooge fans are loving what Boom is doing with Uncle Scrooge and stuff like that. So they're doing it right. And what kids don't know Disney? I mean, like the Mickey Mouse and all those kind of characters.
Children,
communist kids.
Possibly those, but like Josh mentioned, also.
Were you trying to think of more? I was.
Martians.
They also got the
homeless.
They also got the license to the Muppet books, to the Muppet characters, and
they've been cranking those books out.
They've been cranking them out big time. This is the first one, the Muppet Show comic book, Meet the Muppets, with art and written by Roger Landridge, who is awesome.
I find it funny that that's in the Boom Kids line because Muppets have always been sort of more for adults.
Yeah, but you're going to talk about something that is instantly recognizable to kids and something they can sell. It's like, what are you going to do with it?
I wonder, though, because that was an 80s property that really doesn't exist anymore, so I wonder how recognizable it is.
They still make the movies.
They just did
you're right.
And I bet that, I'm guessing those DVDs get bought by people and just get played ad infinitum.
The Muppets have always been the example and kind of what Pixar is doing now, creating a property for kids that can be enjoyed by adults. Like if you watch the Muppet movie is a G-rated movie that I saw in the movie theaters as like a 7-year-old. But I watch it now because it's hysterical, because it's witty and it's because they.
That's why I wonder who the real audience for those movies.
Well, that's the thing, and this book too this goes a little older kids. I would say. I wouldn't say like
the Muppet Show is for adults.
Yeah.
It was not really.
But I watched it
it.
because it's Muppets, because they're puppets, But Landridge did a great job on this. He draws the characters in a way that are recognizable, but they're not just carbon copies of what we already know. He gives his own kind of personal style to it, and they do it in the same style as the Muppet Show was, where they're putting on a show and they're little vignette stories of pigs in space, and
things go wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Dun, dun.
So I love the Muppets; they're fantastic. This series is so great. But and on top of this, they've also been doing Muppet themed stories like Muppets,
Peter Pan,
Robin Hood.
Yeah.
So
the Peter Pan Robin Hood's the pirate one.
Yeah. So I mean, if Muppets are a great kind of set of characters that you do so much with, and it's cool to see them doing kind of creative stuff with it. So, all right, cool. We're gonna take a break, and we come back. We're gonna talk about two specific creators who are making books for kids. A big thanks to GoDaddy for sponsoring this episode of iFanboy. Web hosting from GoDaddy.com includes 99.9% uptime, 24/7 support, and free access to Hosting Connection, the place to install over 33 applications sure to help you get the most from your hosting plan and website. We've got new promo codes. If you use promo code FAN8, you get 10% off any order. Go to revision3.com/GoDaddy and click on iFanboy to get all the new promo codes, and use GoDaddy for all your internet hosting needs and domain name registrations. Thanks again to GoDaddy for sponsoring this episode.
Sometimes you can get creators who have found that their specific niche, something they do really well, is to do comics for kids, or all ages comics as they will. One guy who's really been kicking around for a really long time is Chris Giarrusso.
Yep.
A lot of comic book readers will know him for having done the mini Marvels, which are these little strips.
Bullpen bits.
Yeah.
Those little cute Marvel guys.
Yeah, which are they are adorable.
They are adorable.
They took a killer like Wolverine and made him a lovely child in a classroom.
And Marvel has off and on been collecting, basically over the past couple of years, he's done a little strip that's appeared on the bulletins page or various stuff. They've collected that stuff and released it and have done their own kind of issues.
He's also done backups in big issues. They do Marvel, mini Marvel stories.
And he has this very kind of simple kind of style, and it's hard not to just love the way he draws Nova or Wolverine.
And more recently, he's started doing a creator-owned series for Image called GMan.
Yep. Which he's been doing G-Man for a couple of years, mainly as backups in Savage Dragon.
And you wouldn't think kids would like stories of FBI agents, but they do.
But G-Man is actually his own kind of superhero creation, and he's a kid who has powers, and there are other kid-aged superheroes who he's friends with. This recent miniseries that came out from Image called Cape Crisis, really, for me, because I've been reading his stuff in the back of Savage Dragon for years, but it was always on like one page and the panels are really small. But given his own issue, he's really been able to breathe.
Yeah, big panels.
Big panels, and this story has flowed much better than anything I've read that he's done. The premise being that G-Man's older brother starts selling pieces of their cape, which allows them to fly, and the whole town starts flying, and that throws off the magic that drives their powers, and so him and his friends have to go collect the pieces of the cape. I read these first, and I thought they were great. They were just great, fun superhero stories. As a test, I gave them to my niece, who had previously only read Tiny Titans. She loved it. She could follow the action. And what's great is that, as Josh is flipping, he's running backups by other kid-friendly creators, like Patrick the Wolf Boy by R. Balthazar Franco.
Patrick the Wolf Boy was a very popular, very successful indie kids series, which is kind of a rarity. But it's still existing in here, so they're still doing that. So it's another.
She was able to follow the issue-long story.
Yeah, no. I sat down with her. I've given her the first 3 issues. I said, "What happened in each one?" And she's like, "Well, it's G-Man. He flies." And she got it. She totally. Good. Yeah, it was really cool.
And then also featured in here are some strips of Misery Loves Sherman. Misery Loves Sherman is done by Chris Eliopoulos. We've mentioned him on the show before, and he is known primarily for being the big letterer guy.
One of the best letterers in the business.
Easily. Yeah. And but he's also done a heck of a lot of kid-friendly comics for Marvel, and he does his Misery Loves Sherman strip at miserylovesherman.com.
Which is a web comic that is, kind of a strip-based comic that's about a kid who's got a couple aliens who live with him. And recently he collected a year's worth of strips into a book, which if you go to miserylovesherman.com, you can buy the book. Again, he's one of, Chris Giarrusso, Chris Eliopoulos, Art Balthazar and Franco. These are creators who are focused on making comics for kids, they see the need to provide comics for kids, and so like they're doing this not only because it's the kind of comics they want to make, but also because it's hopefully going to help the industry.
It's a very forward-looking approach, and Chris also did the Franklin Richards comics lines, which were taking regular Marvel comic book characters. Franklin Richards, the son of Reed and Susan Richards of the Fantastic Four, and setting him loose in the Marvel universe, sort of in the way that Tiny Titans does.
Yeah.
It wasn't in continuity. Like, that matters. I shouldn't have to explain that. It's just terrible.
The Franklin Richards line was great, but more recently, this past year, he did a miniseries called Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers, which, on paper, you want to laugh at. You want to, because just the premise of Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers, they're going to put all the pets together, make them to a thing. He made it work. Mm-hmm. It was a great miniseries. It's collected now in a hardcover. They're going to be doing a new series next year with it. You had Lockjaw. You had Lockheed from the X-Men.
Frog Thor. You had Falcon's bird, Red Wing or whatever. Red Bird.
Ms. Lion.
Ms. Lion.
And to most kids,
Speedball's cat.
Yeah.
Most kids, these characters aren't going to matter. It's not going to. There's going to be the angry cat and the frog with a hammer.
The dumb dog.
And that's going to be all that really matters.
Yeah.
And eventually those characters will stick with them and they'll last more. That's the thought, and then you'll end up looking for more Marvel comics.
Then you'll show them Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and they'll be horrified.
Yeah. but he made it work because because the thing with comics is that like us, like we're regular comic readers. I'm a big Marvel fan. I bought it because I want to read these characters I know about. But he did it, to your point, in a way that kids could read it too. Yep. A buddy of mine has 2 kids. He reads it to them every night before they go to bed. They read Lockjaw. They want more Lockjaw. Mm-hmm. So it's that tricky balancing act between what we expect and what kids.
Lockjaw is the best animal character in the Marvel universe. Maybe any.
Josh wants more Lockjaw.
I'm pro Lockheed, but that's our party lines. Yeah. All right. So we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of maybe higher concept, but equally awesome books for kids. A big thanks to Netflix for sponsoring this episode of iFanboy. With Netflix, you can rent over 90,000 titles online, including tons of Blu-ray titles with free shipping both ways to your home. They also have a great Watch Instantly feature, which lets you stream video to your laptop, Xbox 360, or Roku player. Netflix plans start at $4.99, and as a new member, you can get a no-risk 2-week free trial membership. Check it all out at www.netflix.com/iFanboy, and remember to type the www when using this URL.
A few weeks ago, we did a whole show on Bone, talked about Bone from Jeff Smith.
Yep.
Bone is probably, we don't know, but we're going to assume it's the highest selling, most popular kids comic.
Millions
of copies sold.
This is how you do one issue every 6 months.
Yeah.
These are the color collections. They're smaller, and they sell through Scholastic through the schools. So these probably.
You used to get the check thing.
They still do it. Oh. I just looked at Amelia's the other day.
Nothing better than that.
Yeah, the Troll Book Club.
The day they came.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's the best.
So Bone is probably the giant 300-pound gorilla of kids comics.
Yeah, these little volumes broken out into different. This is volume 9, and they're fully colored, so kids will be they're
not freaked out by the lack of color.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And Bone is one of the best books for kids. Yep. I mean, definitely. So go watch that episode.
But there's some newer books that are a bit more sophisticated than the ones we've talked about already. The one I really like a lot, which I haven't read to any kids because I try to avoid the middle cost, is the Wonderful Wizard of Oz book that came out. Eric Schanauer and Scotty Young was the adaptation of the Wizard of Oz novels, not the movie.
Right, the L. Frank Baum novel.
So if you've never actually read the novel, you only seen the movie, you might be a little bit confused, but just gorgeous.
I mean, well, first off,
kids can enjoy it and adults can enjoy it. This is one of those either or.
You look at the team doing this.
Yeah.
Eric Schanauer, who has been in comics for a long time doing the Age of Bronze.
Comics about
historical fiction stuff, like really amazing, Trojan War stories and things like that. But he's an amazing writer.
Yep.
And then you got Scotty Young, who I'll admit, when I heard he was taking on this project, I was like, but then I saw the first issue and I realized that Scotty put something together special for this. Yeah. I mean, he changed his style.
If you follow Scotty at all, online, you'll know that this is like his favorite project he's ever done ever, and he's putting his whole into it. There's a sequel that he's working on now.
Yeah.
I mean, this is sort of thus far the work of his life.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. I think it's a little bit for older kids.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of scary elements, and some of the wicked witches and the monkeys are drawn really scarily. So it's not really for like young kids, but
I mean, I bought this for my same niece who reads Tight and she's 6, and I bought it and said we'll put it on the shelf, and and let her discover it when she's ready. Mm-hmm. But but it's true to the
Tall enough yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's true to L. Frank Baum's story. The all the different because there was like variations of the movie.
Yeah.
So having read that, and if you read that to your kids, this is a great way to read it to them. Kind of illustrate away. But it is just beautiful. I mean, every character that Scotty reimagined and made them so unique. It spent weeks on the New York Times bestseller list so far. It's going to get nominated if not win an Eisner next year.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice collection. I have this collection. There's a lot of sketches in the back where you go through the process of how he chose the look for each character, and it's a really nice. Yeah. This is a really nice book.
He's got a style that doesn't look like anybody else.
No.
Yeah, totally.
No.
It's totally unique.
I have a boy. He's on the way, apparently. So I've been told. And I also recently read Douglas Fredericks and the House of They. This is by Joe Kelly.
What is that again?
Douglas Fredericks and the House of They.
House of They.
House of They, which has a lot to do with it. And I finished it, and I thought, I literally was like, I can't wait to have my son read this.
Yeah.
Because what it is, it's actually a lot like a storybook.
That was weird.
Yeah, it was.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a lot like a storybook where there's like a picture and then some text and things like that. But it's done by Joe Kelly, of course. He's been in superhero comics forever. Yeah. He also is part of Man of Action, who are the team who developed and created Ben 10, which is about as successful cartoon property as you're going to have. Yeah. So, and he worked in animation for a while, so he knows this stuff. And basically what this story is, it's pretty much teaching anti-conformism.
Oh, nice.
The
Subversion.
The start at the beginning is Douglas Fredericks is part of there's a genius family, and young Douglas wants to do some different things with some wacky ideas, and people come by and tell him he can't do that, and they say, well, why can't he do that? He says, well, that's what they say. So he says, screw this, without saying that. I'm going to go see they. So he goes to see they to challenge them, like, if you're going to tell me I can't do this, I need to know a reason for it. And it's just a really well-told story about asking why, and don't just accept what you're told. Know things and have reasons for it.
It's a great message.
But teachers will love that book.
I know.
Yeah, and I was gonna say we didn't have books like this when we grew up. I got sent to the office for asking why.
It's great. It's just a really touching book. The illustrations by Ben Roman.
They're really nice.
Are big and bright and beautiful, and it's probably more of a little bit of a mature message. I'm guessing. 79, 10, 11, something like that. Yeah. 11 maybe even a little too old because it's fairly simple. But I really enjoyed it. It's a great book. This, I think, is a fantastic gift for if you have kids who like to think and like to read and
Smarties.
Yeah.
So cool.
It's from Image Comics, and it's just basically done just like a storybook.
That was going to say, I mean, we got, Image, Boom, Marvel, DC, every comic company is doing what they can to put comics in the hands of kids, and it's awesome. It's great. So if you've got kids, here's some recommendations. If you know some books that we should check out that are good for kids that we didn't talk about, shoot us an email, contact@ifanboy.com.
Yeah.
Or give us a call at 888-FANBOYS, which is 326-2697. It's our voicemail line. You can leave us a voicemail. Tell us about your favorite kids' books.
Yeah, if you're parents and you have kids, make sure you go to the thread for this show and you comment and you tell, help each other out. It's a really good place where, community can help each other out. And then check out everything else at ifanboy.com.
Yeah, we want to hear from you parents. What has worked with you with your kids and stuff like that?
I want to
come tell us your stories.
Yes, please.
And Josh, we're going to have none of this from your boy.
I don't think so.
Teach them the proper way.
That's a good thing.
Little Connor Flanagan won't be doing that. I think Connor Ron Flanagan's a good name.
Connor Ronald Flanagan, the third. Ronald.
Come Ronald.